Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Myths and Misconceptions about Boundaries. I am Barb Nangle, and I'm going to turn it over briefly to Rosa, my assistant.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rosa. I'm a bilingual virtual assistant. I help solo professionals and small business owners with their project management needs and administrative work, like email calendar management and document translation and things of that nature. If you're not doing it already, please follow Barb on Instagram at Higher Power Coaching. I would also like to invite you to listen to her podcast, Fragmented to Whole. I was actually listening to the last two episodes before the webinar, so needless to say, I love it. If you didn't submit your question ahead of time, please type it in the comments, and Barb will respond to your questions live first time. She's also doing a raffle at the end of the webinar. So if you're registered and you're here, please let us know by dropping a comment. Just say hi to us and you'll be able to participate. Okay, Barb, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Rosa. So I'm going to put up my PowerPoint for a moment and then I'll take it back down for a few minutes. But I did want to check my email to make sure I didn't get any messages from people saying they couldn't find me. And I see that there's already people signed up. So I'm really glad that you're here. But let me share my screen to get us started. Wait a minute. Where is it? Hold on, people. Sorry about that. Let's see. From the beginning. Oh, wait. I can't do it until I share my screen. Share my screen. There we go. Okay. We're going to go into the slideshow presentation. All right. So, first of all, I am Barb Nangle. I'm the founder of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, and I want to welcome you to Myths and Misconceptions about Boundary. It's a free 1 hour webinar. And as Rosa mentioned, you can follow me on Instagram at Higher Power Coaching. And actually, I have my old website listed there. I can't believe that I didn't see that. It's actually higherpowercc.com. I got a much shorter URL, but I wanted to, before I go into some stuff about me personally, just give you the agenda for what we're going to go through tonight. So I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction. Then I'm going to share a definition of codependence in the event that you don't know what that word means. I didn't know what it meant until I was 52 years old, and it describes me very clearly. I'm going to give you a few points to remember about establishing new behaviors, because if you're somebody who has difficulty with boundaries or really has never set boundaries, you might start to think negative things about yourself. And anytime we try to do new behaviors, it's important to stay positive. So I want to reinforce you for that. Then we'll bust some myths about boundaries. And then I'm going to go into some principles about boundaries, some of which I will actually go into through the busting of the myths. Then I'm going to do a couple of giveaways. And then if there's time, I'll answer your questions if they haven't already been answered. If you have questions along the way, go ahead and type them into the comments. So I'm going to stop sharing again for a minute now, but I've lost my cursor. There it is. All right. Okay, everybody. So before I get into the actual presentation, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I was someone who was in therapy for about 37 years, from about age 15 to 52. I wasn't in it constantly, but damn close. And I read a gajillion self-help books. I did workshops, workbooks, work groups, etc. And it wasn't until I got into recovery that I really even knew that I didn't have boundaries. But recovery is where I learned to have them. And so now I think of boundaries as both a gift of recovery because I got them from recovery, and they're a tool of recovery because they help me maintain my recovery. I live my life on purpose. I am absolutely thriving in my life right now. And I didn't know that I wasn't really thriving before. And it is amazing. I am excited about everything that I'm involved in. I don't do things that I don't want to do. I love everything that I'm doing. And I attribute a large portion of that to having really healthy boundaries. And so It's a gift that's been given to me, and so I want to give it to you. And from what I hear from people, I have an ability to articulate my experience with boundaries in a way that's really helpful to other people. So I'm really excited to be able to do that. And I don't think I'm necessarily an expert on boundaries per se, but I am an expert on my boundaries. And it seems that when I talk about my boundaries, other people find it helpful. So I don't have all the answers, but I do have some of the answers, and I'm hoping that they're going to be helpful to you. Before I go into the actual PowerPoint presentation and start doing all the myth busting and all that, I do want to share with you the two most important things that I've learned when it comes to boundaries. One is when people say to me, like, what was it that enabled you to have boundaries? It was a lot of things, but I would say the core of it for me was that I came to care more what I think of me than what other people think of me. So I was such a people pleaser that I would say yes to things I didn't want to say to. I said I liked things I didn't like, and that sort of thing. So when I say I care more what I think of me than what other people think of me, what I'm talking about is my own personal integrity. So I was willing to throw my integrity out the window for the opportunity to get people to either like me or think a certain thing of me, whether it was smart or helpful or whatever it was. And now I'm not willing to do that anymore. I want to be a woman of integrity. I want to be a woman who is honest. And so that's what's really going on with me. So I care more about being a woman of integrity than I do for the opportunity for you to like me. So it doesn't mean I don't care what other people think of me. Of course I do. But I care more what I think of me. So one of the things that is really important in establishing boundaries is really starting to care about yourself and take care of yourself and stand up for yourself. And my experience is that setting boundaries is there's like this iterative process where I start to feel better about myself and then I can set boundaries. And because I've set boundaries, I feel better about myself. So it's like this kind of stepwise process. So it's not like go get self esteem and then you can do boundaries. It's kind of like boundaries are going to help you with the self esteem. And the more self esteem, the better you're going to get at the boundaries and all that. And then the other thing that I really didn't even understand until I reflected on it, and I don't hear many people talk about this or, when I read stuff about boundaries, having caring, loving, supportive others on my side when I'm setting boundaries was so imperative. So when I started setting boundaries, I was doing a 12-step program and I was working in a small group of women that we were doing it together. And we would talk with each other about what we were doing and what we planned to do. And sometimes these women literally held my hand, and sometimes they metaphorically held my hand. And they said, yes, this is the right thing to do. No, you're not a bad person. Yes, you deserve to, have peace or whatever the thing is. And I did not understand at the time how incredibly important that was. So I think that if you're going to start setting boundaries, that it's really important to have helpful, supportive others on your side. And one of the things you can do with those people is what we call bookending in recovery. So, bookending is where when you're going to do something difficult, you talk to a person beforehand and afterwards. I'm going to do this difficult thing. You do the difficult thing, and then you say, I did the difficult thing. And bookending, especially when it comes to setting boundaries, does a number of things. One, you're probably going to go through with it if you have another person there that knows what's going on. So you're not going to weasel out of it. Two, you can process your difficult emotions about this new behavior with that person before you go set the boundary and after. And that means you don't have to take those emotions out with the person you're setting boundaries with, which is really important. You want to try to be as equanimable as possible. If that's even a word, I might have just made it up. And the other thing it does is, well, let me just put a pin in that for a second and say one of the reasons that I realize now that setting boundaries was so difficult for me in the beginning was because I grew up not having any healthy models of what healthy separation was. I grew up being abandoned, like emotionally, not physically. And so I had this fear of abandonment. So setting boundaries felt like abandonment to me because I didn't have a model for healthy separation. So When you have a caring and safe other person that you can connect with when you're going to set a boundary, even if you don't consciously remember while you're doing the boundary setting, subconsciously, you know, I'm connected to somebody else. I'm not abandoned. I'm not alone. And the power of that is amazing. So I would say that you really need to start taking much better care of yourself and caring more about yourself and what you think about yourself to set boundaries, but then setting boundaries is going to actually increase all that. And number two, make sure that you have at least one other person, if not a couple of people, that you can talk to about setting boundaries. So, with that being said, I'm going to share the screen again and go into the PowerPoint presentation and start busting some myths about boundaries. All right, so here we go. All right, we've already covered that. So, codependence, in case you are not familiar with this term, people who are codependent focus on others rather than themselves. We tend to look outside of ourselves to get love and attention from those who can't give it. Now, it doesn't mean everybody that we seek love and attention from can't give it, but often there are a few like really important people in our lives that we kind of almost chase after to get their love and attention. And we want it, want it, want it, want it so badly because we don't have it for ourselves. We place the needs and wishes of others first, often to the point where we deny ourselves physically and emotionally. So here's an example. I remember when I first got into recovery, being in the car with somebody and I had to go to the bathroom. He said, "We should pull over now." I go, "I can wait." He goes, "You know, codependent people do that all the time." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "They hold it when they don't need to." And because they're so used to not paying attention to what's going on inside, that they just shut it down and they don't meet their own needs. And I was like, that's bullshit. And the more I paid attention to it and the more I started talking with other people, I realized that it was true. So that's just one example of how we might deny ourselves physically. And now I want to talk about some points to remember when you're setting new behaviors. So it's important to think positively and to remember anything worth doing is worth doing badly at first. So if you've never really set boundaries, you're not going to be good at it in the beginning. But if you really want to get good at it, and I'm telling you, it is going to be a game changer for you. It may not make sense to you right now, but having boundaries leads to so much freedom. I have so much more peace and serenity in my life because I have healthy boundaries. It's absolutely worth doing, but you got to be willing to do it badly at first. If you think about any new behavior that you've done, like walking, like nobody gets up and walks for the first time. They trip, they fall, they toddle, and they get better at it. So anything worth doing is worth doing badly at first. So don't assume that you're going to be able to do it well and don't wait until you can do it well because that doesn't happen. And then the other thing to think about is you don't get better at something by not doing it. The way to get better at setting boundaries is by setting boundaries. You have to practice. Practice makes progress. And the other thing I want you to remember, and this is really about anything that has to do with changing your behavior, whether you want to get rid of old habits, whether you want to change a pattern, whether you want to start like a new hobby or something like that. Human behavior change is often a slow process. Quitting won't speed it up. So if there's ever been something that you really wanted to do and you felt like it was going too slowly, and you quit, did that help you? No. So if you've worked on setting boundaries before and it didn't go really well and you quit, you're not any better for that. So don't quit, keep going. All right, so now that I've said all that, we're going to go into busting some myths about boundaries. So some people, especially those who don't have healthy boundaries, think, I don't want to put walls between myself and other people. Well, boundaries are different than walls. They're more like a fence than they are like a wall. A wall keeps out the bad, but it also keeps out the good. And we don't want to do that. That's why we want it to be more like a fence. Myth number 2 is that people sometimes think that boundaries are very rigid. This is very similar to the idea that they're a wall, and they're not. They're flexible. So boundaries can change over time. They can change under different circumstances, and they can change with different people. So you might have to make a tighter boundary when you first start setting boundaries because you don't really know where your comfort zone is. And then as you get more comfortable in your own skin, then you might be able to loosen it up a little bit. Or you might have a really tight boundary with these people, but not with those people. Or you might have a really tight boundary at work that you don't have at home. So they're not the same everywhere and they are flexible and you can change them whenever you want. It's about your comfort and what works for you. Busted myth number 3. A lot of times people think, okay, I'm going to learn how to set boundaries and then everybody's going to stop doing all the shit that I don't want them to do. And they think that boundaries are to control other people, and they're not. They're for you to enforce, not for other people. So I love this metaphor of having a healthy boundary is like having a fence with a gate in it. And this is my best depiction of drawing a fence with a gate in it in PowerPoint. So the idea of being inside of a fence with a gate in it, it opens from the inside only, which means you're the gatekeeper. You decide who or what gets in and out. They don't decide out there, I'm coming in or I'm going out. You're the one that decides, and you're the one that has to do something about it, because boundaries without consequences aren't boundaries. They're hopes and wishes. So you don't set a boundary in your mind and then people automatically respect it. There have to be some kind of consequences. So very basic example of this. Let's say you work in an office where there's a bunch of different offices and you have a door on your office and people constantly walk in, and you've decided that you want to start having people knock before they come in. So you can tell people that, and if you tell them to knock and they don't knock and you don't do anything, then nobody's going to knock, right? But if you tell them to knock and they don't knock and you say, excuse me, I really want you to knock before you come in. So the consequence there is that you reinforced it. You said something to them. If they do it again, you say, really, I really want you to knock before you come in. And if they don't do it again, then you might actually get up, walk them out the office and say, okay, let's try that again. Knock on the door and then I'll let you in. And that really reinforces for them what it is you want them to do. So you have to actually do something. And there are a number of reasons why people might not respect your boundaries when you first set them. One, they might not believe you because you've never done it before. Another might be they forgot because you've never done it before. 2 might be they don't respect you. And 3, maybe they don't respect anybody. And so you setting boundaries is a way for them to start respecting you. And maybe they will or maybe they won't, but eventually they will respect your boundaries. All right, so we're at myth number 4. So boundaries are not just for other people and what you want them to do and what you don't want them to do. They're for you too. So what do I mean by that? I've learned that there's a type of boundary called a boundary of self-containment. In other words, these are things that I need to contain for myself. So here are some examples. These are my own personal boundaries of containment. So I used to give away personal and private information to people all the time that didn't necessarily know me that well and didn't deserve to have that level of trust with me. So I need to contain that. And I now only give personal and private information to people that I've built up some trust with. I need to contain unsolicited advice. So I used to give unsolicited advice to people all the time. And now I only give advice to people if they ask for it or if I ask them for permission to give them some kind of feedback. So I want to point something out about these 2 different kinds of boundaries of self-containment. Notice that the first one, personal and private information, if I don't contain that, I put myself at risk, potentially put myself in harm's way. So it is protective of me to contain that stuff. Whereas unsolicited advice doesn't really harm me. Well, it might harm my reputation because people might say, oh, she gives unsolicited advice all the time. But what it really does is it creates chaos out there in the world. So it's protective of other people for me to contain my unsolicited advice. So you'll see as I populate the rest of the circle, some of the things in here are things that are boundaries of self containment that are going to benefit me, and some of them are going to benefit other people. So one of the things that I've found is that when people who don't have good boundaries often hang out with people that don't have good boundaries, and they really only think about the boundaries as the things that they're trying to keep out. They don't think about the things they need to hold on to and keep in. And so this was really important insight for me. So I have an inner critic. I need to contain that. As soon as I hear that going, I need to just nip that in the bud as soon as I realize it's going on. I don't complain. If I am complaining, I'm basically saying, God, I can do better than you can. And it just creates negativity around me, and I don't want to be participating in that. I used to over explain everything. And honestly, if I'm really honest with myself, over explaining was that I wanted people to agree with me. That's what that was about. I used to give a lot of excuses. I was critical. I gave too much information way back before TMI was even an expression. I negative self-talk, very similar to the inner critic. As soon as I realize I have that negative self-talk going on, I need to contain that. This has been really helpful to me. I heard a guy say one time, I talk to myself more than I listen to myself. And I love that because if I'm listening to myself, it's more likely to be negative self-talk. If I'm talking to myself on purpose, it's going to be something much more loving. My thoughts, I actually had a boss one time say to me, Barb, did your mom tell you that you had to verbalize every single thought you ever had in your entire life? She did not, but I don't need to share everything that's going on with me with everybody else. Rescuing and fixing. This was my MO before recovery. I did not have boundaries from trying to fix and rescue other people. I need to contain that now. I am helpful to people. I am supportive of people, but I don't I only help people who meet me at least halfway. Whereas it used to be, I'd be like, I'll do 90 and you do 10. Okay, I'll do 99 and you do 1. All right, I'll do like 99.9 and you can do 0.1, like show up or something like that. Not anymore. And it's not my job to fix other people. It's my job to take care of myself and to be supportive of other people if they ask me to. And the other thing is I used to give away quick trust to people. I would trust people for no reason. And in fact, I trusted people who were untrustworthy. And now I understand that trust is something that is built over time and it takes time. So there's another kind of boundary that I think most people kind of understand, and they're called boundaries of self-protection. So I've done the best I can with the visuals here to try to depict what it means to contain things and to protect ourselves from the outside. So these are things that most people understand. And again, the things that are listed here are things that I need to protect myself from. So I can't handle being around mean people. And I hung out with substance users my whole life. I was one. That's not an environment that is good for me. As I just mentioned, I used to trust untrustworthy people. And then I would blame them for being untrustworthy and be mad at them, even though they'd been untrustworthy the whole time. And what I learned is that I'm the one who trusted them and I shouldn't have. So I need to stay away from, I need to protect myself from untrustworthy people. Personally, I can't be watching the news. It is toxic for me. It's not good for my mental health. And I need to protect myself from things that aren't good for my mental health. So I don't pay attention to the news anymore. I stay away from dysfunctional environments. Unguarded time. I used to give my time away to people all the time. I bent over backwards for people and I neglected myself and my chores and my responsibilities for other people. And now I'm very guarded about my time. I'm very scheduled in my time and regimented, and I'm a very consistent person. And some people don't like that. And it's too bad. I'm sorry if you don't like it, but this is really working for me to guard my time. As I said earlier, I am absolutely thriving in my life right now. And it's sad that other people get upset that I schedule my time, but it's not sad enough to make me stop scheduling my time. I don't hang around with unsafe people, yellers, screamers. My family, I come from a pretty dysfunctional family. And the way that I protect myself from them has to do with spending an incredibly small amount of time with them. Some of them, it means zero time. I have to stay out of other people's business. This has to do with that whole unsolicited advice and rescuing and fixing and that sort of thing. It is not good for my mental health to go outside of that boundary and to get into other people's business. Can't hang around abusive people. Politics, very similar to the news. Needy people, clingy people. The way that I protect myself from these people is by spending very little time and putting boundaries on my time. Drugs, alcohol, sugar don't work for me. They're not good for me. Neither are toxic situations or negativity. So, boundaries are not just about these boundaries of self protection, they're also about boundaries of self containment. So, they're for you to contain certain things that help you and other people. Now, and one of the realizations I had over time is that these boundaries of self containment are also boundaries of self protection. It protects me to not make myself vulnerable to other people, and it also protects me not to spread chaos. All right. So, myth number 5, boundaries are not one and done. You have to experiment with how tight or loose they are, and that might change over time. So I've tried to depict that here by showing some of them smaller and larger. For me, what I've realized is that time is by far my most precious resource because I can generate more love, more money, and more energy. I cannot generate more time. So I keep a really tight boundary on my time. I schedule myself. If you look at my calendar, I've got blocks of time and color coded. And if somebody says they want to talk with me, I have to schedule it in order to make it happen because I have so many things I'm interested in, want to get done. So you get to decide, and how tight or loose your boundary is going to be, it's going to change over time with different people and different circumstances. All right. And number 6, people are not, quote, taking advantage of you. You're giving away your resources. So, are you giving away your love, compassion, and forgiveness too much to others and not holding on to enough of it for yourself? Are you giving away your time so that you're run ragged and have no time to play and have fun in your life? Are you giving away money to others to buy their affection or to rescue them or save them because they, quote, need you? Are you self supporting through your own contributions? And are you letting other people be self supporting through their own contributions? Have you given away all of your energy so that you have none left for yourself? And then are you trying to restore that energy by drinking coffee, energy drinks, being slothful, numbing with the drug of the plug or other substances? This was me before recovery. I used to say to people, I'm an open book. I was an open book. I was an open gate. I just gave away all this stuff for other people. One of the things that has been astonishing to me about having boundaries is the amount of energy that I have because I'm only living this one life right here, my life. I'm living my life. I'm not living 15 million other people's lives. I'm not trying to run other people's lives. I'm not worried about what other people. I have peace and serenity in my brain and in my body. I'm not like this all the time. All right. So we're going to have a commercial break here. And that is for my 6 weeks to better boundaries pilot group coaching program that I'm going to be launching in January. And one of you tonight is going to have the opportunity to win a free membership in this group. So, what is this group? This is a group coaching program that is for you if you feel guilt and shame when you try to set boundaries. I know that was me when I first started. I felt like, oh my God, I'm a horrible person and they're going to think I don't care about them and all that sort of thing. I can help you with that. If you set boundaries, but then you immediately take them back, this group coaching pilot is for you. If you're tired of being taken advantage of, if you feel disrespected and dismissed by others, if you're afraid of what others might think, if you, whatever, fill in the blank, like if you're really concerned with what other people think, this pilot coaching program would be really helpful for you. And if you're constantly going against your own values and not living your life in a way that makes you proud. So this goes back to that thing I was saying earlier about integrity, that I was willing to throw my integrity out the window, under the bus. I was willing to throw my integrity out for the opportunity that other people would like me. And it really kind of caused me to be sort of fragmented. I had a very cracked foundation, and now I am whole. So if that's you, then 6 weeks to Better Boundaries group coaching pilot is for you. And what you get is 6 90-minute live weekly group coaching sessions via Zoom. We'll have a multimedia curriculum with weekly exercises. You'll be part of a community of boundary builders and boundary buddies. It's a $13.50 value. I'm normally going to price it at $700, but because this is a pilot, it's only going to be $350. But wait, there's more. It's Tuesdays, January 5th through February 9th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you're my current client, it's free. You get to participate for free. So if you're not already my client, you could become one and then get in for free. If you're my former client, it's only $200. And for those of you who are here tonight, up to 5 of you can get 20% off. All you have to do is type "I'm in the comments. So the first 5 people that do that, I will send you a coupon code and you'll get 20% off. So back to busting myths about boundaries. Oh, wait, I forgot. I have some comments. I'm not going to read these out loud to you, but I wanted to share some of the comments that people who have been going to my trainings and workshops have said about my work. My favorite one is the very first one, because this woman said to me, she actually emailed me and we got into this really long exchange, and she told me, you need to write a book. And I was like, I probably will write a book. But she said she's been working on her boundaries for over 20 years and that my presentation was the best she had ever seen, read, or experienced. So, that may not be you, but hopefully you'll think it's the best you've seen in, 5 years or something like that. But anyway, this is some of the feedback that I've gotten from people, and I'm really excited about it because if I can give this gift of boundaries to other people, I really want to, because I didn't even know that I needed help with boundaries. I didn't understand that I didn't have healthy boundaries. So what are they? I love this quote. I don't know who this person is, but I snatched this meme off of the web somewhere. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. So you're far enough away from me that I can be my absolute, real, genuine self and love me, and I can love you. So I love that metaphor that it's a distance at which I can love both of us. Boundaries are an open invitation for true intimacy and connection because they reflect to others who you truly are. Some people think boundaries are not an open invitation, that they're more like a wall. And they're not. They're really, what do I need to do to take care of myself so I can be the real me? That's what boundaries are for. And if I can be the real me, that is intimacy. When we're faking the funk with other people, that is not intimacy. Speaking of which, I actually feel moved to share with you the podcast that came out today that I recorded is called How to Attract Emotionally Available People. And it's really tied to this notion of intimacy. So if you're not already listening to my podcast, I feel like this is probably one of my best ones because it's not that long. It's only like 15 minutes and there's a lot of meat in it. And it really talks about like how I came to understand why my pattern in my life was that I always attracted emotionally unavailable people. So you might want to give that a listen. It's Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, and you can listen to it on pretty much any podcast outlet. It is never your job to convince anyone to understand your boundaries. You don't have to explain them. And choosing to no longer over explain and justify the boundary is a boundary in itself. They're your boundaries. People don't need to understand them. If you choose to explain them to people, you can do that. But you don't have to explain anything to anybody. It's your life. You get to live your life the way you want to live it, and you don't have to explain to other people. And it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they're your spouse, your child, your parent, your sibling, your twin. I don't care. Your boss. It doesn't matter. You don't have to explain yourself. You can choose to, but you don't have to. All right. What is a boundary? It's a limit or a line over which you won't let others cross. So I heard this one time recently. It's not like an electric dog fence. It's not like I'm going to put up a boundary and then as soon as people come close, they're going to get electrocuted and they're going to go away. That's not how it works. You don't let others cross it. If somebody crosses it, then you have to give them some kind of consequence. You have to say or do something. And as I said earlier, some people are going to respect your boundaries and some people are not. And some, like most people, are not super toxic people. And they just need to get used to the fact that you actually mean it when you're going to set boundaries. When it comes to really toxic people, you're going to have to be more rigid. So I've heard people say, when is no a complete sentence, or no is a complete sentence? And I would say this: no is a complete sentence when somebody is abusive or toxic or hasn't taken no for an answer. For most humans, you don't need to just say no. You can say, no, thank you. No, I'm not interested. And you might give a little tiny bit of an explanation if it makes sense and it's the cordial thing to do and you choose to do it. But you're the one that is in charge of enforcing your boundaries. And if you're around super toxic people who simply don't have the ability to respect your boundaries, then you have to decide, am I willing to keep this person in my life? And maybe you're not, maybe you are, but only you can decide that. Nobody can tell you. You can decide. Yes.
Barb, there's actually a question that might be tied to what we're
Okay.
talking about here. So
Okay,
let me
wait.
show it to you.
All right.
This
That
is
means
from
that I need
Kenny.
to stop sharing screen so I can see it because I can only see my PowerPoint. All
Okay.
right. And then that means I need to come out of here. Where are you? There you are. Oh, wow. Look at all that. People have to have a level of respect for me as a person to respect my boundary. What you're describing takes time, I believe. What if you have years of experience where people, family don't respect who I am? That may be my fault and their problem, but it has to be dealt with normally with anger and drama. That means that I tend to avoid the drama by avoiding the people, which only exacerbates the situation. Am I missing something, or is it just about being brave in the moment and
True to yourself.
true to yourself? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So there's a lot going. Can you leave that back up?
Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. So you're right. It absolutely does take time. And so I can really talk from my own experience. So I have a brother who just does not, like, he's incapable of respecting my boundaries. So here's an example. I would say, listen, I don't want to talk about politics. And I would say, Steve, reminder, I'm not interested in talking about politics. Yep, I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to. So I keep saying I don't want to talk about politics. And I realize he's absolutely incapable of not talking about politics. It's the only thing that he really, really thinks about. So I have choices. I can either be around him and listen to him talk about politics, or I can not be around him. And so what I chose to do was, rather than not be around him at all, was to just really shorten the amount of time that I was around him. And that's a consequence, and I'm willing to live with that because it's toxic for me. Even though I agree with him politically, he screams and yells at me and I agree with him. So I'm like, I can't handle the yelling and the screaming, and I can't handle the talk about that. So that's something I had to decide over time, how I was going to manage it. And when you say they have to have a level of respect for you, I would say that what happened for me was that I helped people come to respect me by setting boundaries with them and reinforcing them over and over and over again. I taught them how to treat me. My lack of boundaries before I was in recovery was me teaching them how to treat me, which is let me lay down on the floor and have you walk all over me. Oh, and then I'm going to be mad at you and resentful and treat you like shit because you pissed me off because I let you walk all over me. But over time, as I started saying, no, no, I really mean it. You can't do that anymore. I'm not willing to do that anymore. That doesn't work for me anymore. They start either respecting you or they start not spending any time with you. And unfortunately, when it comes to really toxic people, sometimes we actually have to take them out of our lives or take ourselves out of their lives. This brother that I'm talking about, I don't really see him at all anymore. I'm not going to say I'm not willing to see him anymore, but I do know I've honed in on my maximum amount of time with him is 90 minutes. It's not 91, it's 90. And I just really prefer not to interact with him. I've even stopped sending him birthday cards and Christmas cards and that sort of thing because it just feels disingenuous to me. So let me see if there's anything else that I feel like I can say there. I feel like that's as much experience, strength, and hope as I have on that. But Ken, if you wanna, I know that you have my phone number, so if you want to talk about that, we can do that. Let me go back to, let's see what time we're at. Okay, we're doing good with time. I'm going to share my screen again and we'll finish out the PowerPoint presentation. But that was a really great question, Ken, and I bet it was helpful to lots of people. Okay. So we said that it's a line over which you won't let others cross. Your boundaries help you assess your tolerance for emotional, physical, or intellectual stimulation or closeness. So that thing I was just saying about my brother with the politics, that was like an intellectual boundary. Like he tells me what I should think all the time. I'm not comfortable with that. When it comes to physical boundaries, there are some people, I'm a toucher. I love hugging, touching, squeezing. There are some people that skeeve me out and I don't want to be around them. There are other people who don't like to be touched. So you get to say for yourself, no hugs, please. You get to decide, and it's going to change for different people in different circumstances over time. Boundaries are emotional and or physical space that you need in order to be the real you without pressure from others to be something that you're not. So what makes you comfortable in your own skin? And part of my process of recovery was that I didn't know what made me comfortable in my own skin. And starting to set boundaries helped give me breathing room to figure that out. I didn't know for sure who I was because I was changing all the time because of all the people pleasing that I was doing. I was saying, yeah, I'm happy to do that, or yeah, I'll go there, or whatever you want. And I wasn't allowing myself to really sit with, okay, what do I truly want in this moment? And I'm able to do that now because I have healthy boundaries. And I've said this a number of times, enforcing boundaries with others means following through with consequences. You don't just say, please knock on my door, and then don't do anything about it. You say, please knock on my door, and then you train them to knock on your door if they're not doing it on their own. Okay. Boundaries draw lines, metaphorically, of course, between what's mine and not mine. So inside this circle is my property. I own it. And that includes my feelings, my attitudes, my behaviors, and my choices. So I used to believe that other people were responsible for my feelings and they were responsible for my attitude. They pissed me off. They were responsible for my behavior. They made me do that. They were responsible for my choices. I didn't have a choice. That's all bullshit. These are my property and I'm in charge of them. You're not. So what's outside the boundary is other people's property. It's not mine. So other people's feelings, attitudes, beliefs, and choices are not my feelings, attitudes, beliefs, and choices. I don't make people feel certain things, etc. So here are some examples of things outside of my boundary. Other people's happiness or misery is their property, not mine. It's not up to me to make sure that people are happy, or if they're miserable, to get them to be happy. Other people's abusive and dysfunctional behavior are not mine. It's not up to me to fix them. I don't have to put up with it, but it's not up to me to fix it. Other people's inability to be loving, caring, or nurturing. So I used to date people. This was them, right? And I thought I was going to turn them into something, to somebody. That's their property. It's not mine. I'm in here, inside the circle, not outside the circle. Other people's consequences. This is the classic enabler. I was definitely an enabler. So if you have somebody who, for example, if they're an alcoholic and they fall down drunk and vomit all over themselves on the front lawn, if you drag them in the house and clean them all up and get them to bed and do their laundry for them, they have no consequences for that. But if you leave them out there on the front lawn, passed out for everybody to see, they're the ones that have those consequences. They're not for you to take care of. That's their property. Other people's health and wealth is theirs. Their guilt is there. You don't make other people feel guilty, or you shouldn't be trying to make other people feel guilty. Other people's problems. If you want to help people, that's okay, but you should ask them if they want help, or you should wait for them to ask you. Other people's addiction and dysfunction are theirs. You can't help people turn into healthy people that take care of themselves. You can do that for yourself and you can model that behavior for other people, but it's not something that you can do for other people. And other people's hopes and dreams are not theirs. So if they have a hope and a dream, it's up to them to actually work on putting a plan of action into place. You can be supportive of them, but you shouldn't be more invested in it than they are. So the things inside the circle are my responsibility, and all these things outside are not my responsibility. I didn't understand any of this stuff before I got healthy boundaries. Oh, it's time for us to do giveaways now. So I'm going to show you what we're giving away first, and then I'll come off screen so we can figure it out. So the first thing I'm going to give away is a book called The Power of TED, The Empowerment Dynamic. It's by David Emerald. If you have ever heard of the drama triangle, or it's also referred to as the Karpman triangle, this is a dysfunctional pattern that most people who don't have boundaries are familiar with, even if they don't know what it's called. And the idea is that there are three roles, and that it's a dysfunctional pattern that many people go through to some extent. But if you grew up in a dysfunctional family like I did, then you've done it your whole life. And the three positions are the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. And most of us are have one of these as our they call out of the gate position. So I was the consummate rescuer, but I also have really serious victim mentality. And what we do is we move around in the different positions on this triangle. And this book right here is about the antidote. And what I love about this book is, number one, it's the antidote to the victim triangle. And number two, it's written in story form. It is not like a textbook. It's like a parable, basically. And then the other thing that we're giving away is the person who gets picked for the second giveaway gets to choose. They either get 2 55-minute coaching sessions with me, which is a $300 value, or they get a membership in 6 weeks to Better Boundaries group coaching, which is a $1,350 value. So I am going to come off screen in just a minute, but if you signed up for my webinar, you are automatically on my email list. If you didn't get it already, I'm at Higher Power Coaching on Instagram. And if you have questions, hopefully we'll get to them. You can type them into the comments. But I'm going to stop sharing now and come on screen. And if you have not already typed a note for Rosa to know that you're here, put a note in the comments so that we know you're here, so that your name will go into the drawing. And she already has the list of all the people that registered. If you did not register and you're here tonight, you absolutely need to put a comment in there so she knows to put your name on the list. So, does it seem to you like you have a handle on everybody that's here, Rosa?
Yes, I think we're ready.
Okay, so I take it that you have a dog. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's
Yes,
okay. No, that's all right. I
so
was
sorry.
wondering what that was. So what she's done is she has a random number generator, and so she's given everybody a number that is attending tonight. And so the first person that wins something is the person that wins the TED book, which I will mail to you. So I will get in touch with you to get your your mailing address. But who is the winner of the TED and the Empowerment Dynamic book?
So the first winner is Becky.
All right, Becky! Yay! So I'll be in touch with you, Becky, to get your mailing address, and I'll send that to you. And drum roll. I'm not good at drum roll. Drum roll. Who is the winner of item number 2?
Okay, so our second winner is Erin.
Erin! Woohoo! Yay, Erin! So, Erin, type us a message and let us know if you want to take the 2 free coaching sessions or you want to take the 6 weeks to better boundaries. I have a feeling she's going to take the group coaching program. So let me know if she puts a comment in there, Rosa.
Sure. And we also have another question.
Okay, go ahead and put that up.
Okay.
We have a few minutes.
Sure.
Okay. Hi, Radita. I'm glad you made it. I hope I'm saying your name properly. Okay, the first time someone does something that makes me feel uncomfortable, I notice it. The second time, I acknowledge that the first time was not an isolated event or an accident, but a potential pattern, and I begin to observe more closely and plan my response. The third time, I always speak to the person about it. I call it my rule of 3. What's my opinion about this? I think it really depends on how uncomfortable it is. I have no problem saying to somebody the first time, this makes me uncomfortable, or I'm uncomfortable with this. But it really depends on how uncomfortable it is. There's so many variables. Who is the person? What is your relationship with them? Is it the first time you met them? Is there a power dynamic? Like, are they the boss? Are you the boss? Are they the landlord? Or you're the tenant? Is it your mother? Is it your sister? There's so many variables. So I don't think, I don't know that I would wait for the third time. I think I've gotten a lot better about saying right from the get-go, I'm uncomfortable, because that's not something that somebody can really argue with. And you didn't tell anybody to do anything. You're saying, I'm uncomfortable. And the way they respond to that is going to give you some information. So they might, if they say, suck it up, you're like, okay, I'm on alert now because this is someone that doesn't have a lot of compassion. But if they say, oh, I'm so sorry, I won't do that again. Or really, what was it about that made you uncomfortable? All those different responses are going to give you an idea of what kind of emotional intelligence does this person have? What kind of boundaries do they perhaps have? That sort of thing. So, I don't know. I can see that in some circumstances it might be a good rule of 3, but there's just so many variables. So I hope that that answered your question. Is there another one, Rosa?
No, that was it. I just read a comment from Erin. She's not sure which one to pick.
Okay. Well, I can talk with Erin about that.
Okay.
Okay. You don't have to pick tonight, but we know that you're a winner. Well, you're a winner anyway. All right. Are there any other? If anybody has another question, we do have 7 more minutes. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in. If not, we will close early.
I don't see any more questions or comments.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. If you registered for this, you're on my mailing list, which means I will be sending out the slides, and I will also be sending out the recording so that you can watch it again if you need to, or if you want to remind you what the stuff on the slide said. I know that for me, I need to hear the stuff, not just see it written down. And I wish you all the happiest of holidays. I know that holiday time can be really difficult when it comes to boundaries with people. And I think this year, especially with the COVID environment, that people are really worn down and it might be really difficult. So you might want to play this again. And don't forget, even if you didn't win an entry into my 6 weeks to better boundaries with Barb, I'd love to have you participate in that. Again, it's Tuesdays, January 5th through February 9th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Any last words from you, Rosa?
No, I just wanted to thank you for, allowing me to be part of this conversation. It's always fun to be um, part of the webinars. You know how much I love your
All right.
content.
Yeah, thank you.
So happy holidays, everyone, and thanks for joining us. And until next time.
All right. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Good
Happy
night.
holidays.